Every Call of Duty character you missed, explained. Think you've got prestige-level knowledge? Stick around till the end and confirm the tag. Russell Adler. Russell Adler is the CIA's favorite employee because he never asks if something's legal. Adler is positioned as a good guy, but his methods tell a very different story. He lies, manipulates, and rewrites memories in the name of national security. In Cold War and beyond, Adler proves that Western intelligence agencies use the same tools as their enemies, just with better press releases. His treatment of Bell and his involvement in psychological conditioning place him directly in the lineage of Dragovich and Perseus. Adler doesn't see people as individuals. He sees assets, liabilities, and expendable variables. In the Black Ops 6-era world, Adler represents the system that never learned anything from its mistakes. He survives not because he's right, but because the system protects itself. Russell Adler is portrayed by Bruce Thomas, who deliberately played him with emotional restraint rather than villainous intensity. Interviews confirm Adler was designed to feel calm, controlled, and morally certain, avoiding obvious bad guy cues. Adler isn't meant to intimidate through rage, but through confidence. He feels dangerous because he never doubts himself. Adler fights for freedom, as long as he gets to decide what you remember. Stitch. Stitch is the walking proof that brainwashing never really stops, it just gets better branding. Stitch is a former Perseus lieutenant and a survivor of Cold War-era psychological conditioning. His entire existence is a response to the numbers program, Dragovich-style mind control, and CIA black operations. Unlike classic villains, Stitch isn't motivated by ideology or power. He's motivated by revenge, specifically revenge against Adler, the man who broke his mind and left him trapped inside repeating memory loops. Stitch represents the long-term consequences of Black Ops tactics. When you turn people into weapons, don't be surprised when they stay broken. His story bridges Cold War paranoia with BO6's modern intelligence warfare, showing that the methods never changed, only the technology did. Stitch isn't a mastermind, he's Fallout. Stitch's fractured memory mirrors Mason's numbers conditioning, but with a crucial difference. Stitch remembers too much. Developers used fragmented dialogue and looping imagery to convey instability without exaggeration. His conflict with Adler is framed as cause and effect, not good versus evil. Stitch exists to expose the long-term damage of Black Ops conditioning programs. Unlike Menendez, he isn't chasing power or control, he wants closure, and he's willing to destroy everything to get it. Turns out brainwashing someone is a bad way to make friends. Alex Keller. Alex Keller is the operative who proves that loyalty sometimes means going off the grid. Alex Keller is a CIA operative featured prominently in Modern Warfare 2019, initially embedded with the Urzikstan Liberation Force under the alias Echo 3-1. Alex operates in the gray areas of modern conflict, balancing official directives with on-the-ground realities. His storyline centers on cooperation with Farah Karim's resistance to combat the Al-Qatala terrorist organization. Alex is characterized by his willingness to defy orders when they conflict with his moral compass, ultimately choosing to stay behind and fight with Farah's forces, despite the personal cost. His self-sacrifice, including a decision to operate with a prosthetic leg after being injured, underscores his dedication. Alex's arc emphasizes the blurred lines between ally and enemy in modern warfare, and his story is a testament to the personal toll of endless conflict. In a real-life interview with Chad Michael Collins, the actor who portrays Alex, he highlighted how the character's journey reflects the real-life complexities faced by special operatives who often operate in morally ambiguous environments. Collins noted that Alex's moral decisions and willingness to go rogue were inspired by the stories of real-life operatives who prioritize the mission and the people they protect over bureaucratic protocol. Went off the grid so often, he probably doesn't have a home address anymore. Emma Kagan. Emma Kagan is what happens when war stops wearing uniforms and starts wearing a business suit. Emma Kagan operates in the Black Ops 7 era, where power doesn't come from armies. It comes from leverage, data, and influence. She isn't a battlefield commander or a revolutionary leader. She's a strategist who controls outcomes without ever pulling the trigger. Kagan represents the evolution of Call of Duty villains from terrorists and generals into corporate power brokers. Instead of launching missiles, she destabilizes nations through information warfare, financial pressure, and intelligence manipulation. Her actions show that modern conflicts aren't fought to win. They're fought to control narratives and markets. Kagan doesn't care about ideology, loyalty, or patriotism. She cares about results. In a world shaped by Menendez, Perseus, and CIA Black Ops failures, Kagan proves that the most dangerous people don't need armies. They just need access. Kagan lacks a traditional boss fight because she represents power that can't be shot. She's written as an abstract antagonist whose decisions shape conflicts while she remains insulated from consequences. Her role mirrors modern warfare driven by corporations, investors, and intelligence networks rather than armies. Kagan also bridges ideological villains and system-driven threats like Corvus, the last human face before automation fully takes over. Who's more dangerous, Emma Kagan or Jonathan Irons? Comment below. Captain McMillan. Captain McMillan is a veteran SAS sniper and early mentor to John Price in Call of Duty 4 Modern Warfare. He leads the iconic mission All Gillied Up in the irradiated ruins of Pripyat, emphasizing stealth, patience, and restraint over direct combat. McMillan teaches Price that survival depends on timing and observation, not aggression. Despite operating with prior injuries that slow him down, he maintains full control of the mission through discipline and experience. His guidance directly shapes Price's tactical mindset across the modern warfare timeline. McMillan represents Old Guard Special Operations doctrine: complete the objective, avoid unnecessary fights, and disappear without a trace. He survives not because he's fast, but because he knows when to move. All Gillied Up was inspired by real SAS and CIA sniper operations during the Cold War. Developers referenced real-world ghillie suit usage and sniper concealment tactics in interviews, noting that McMillan was written to embody realism rather than cinematic flair. The mission consistently ranks among the greatest FPS levels ever made. Never rushed, never missed. Dimitri Petrenko. Petrenko is the soldier who survives because the war hasn't finished him yet. Dimitri Petrenko is a Red Army infantryman and the Soviet protagonist of World at War. His story follows the brutal advance from Stalingrad to Berlin under Reznov's command. Petrenko is not special forces or intelligence linked. He is expendable infantry. His missions emphasize mass assaults, attrition, and survival over strategy. Petrenko survives through endurance rather than skill, reflecting historical Red Army doctrine. His arc strips World War II of heroism, portraying victory as exhaustion rather than triumph. Petrenko became one of the most recognizable victims of Dragovich's Nova 6 massacre. Paul Jackson. Paul Jackson is the soldier who taught Call of Duty that losing can be the point. Paul Jackson is a U.S. Marine and playable character in Call of Duty 4: Modern Warfare. He represents conventional infantry combat during the U.S. invasion of the Middle East, contrasting with the SAS's covert operations. Jackson isn't special forces or a strategist. He's a frontline Marine executing orders in a collapsing war zone. His story ends after a nuclear detonation when the player briefly regains control only to witness Jackson's final moments amid destruction and radiation. The sequence permanently redefined COD storytelling by proving that player control does not guarantee survival. Jackson's death reframes the war as unwinnable through force alone and highlights the expendability of infantry in modern conflict. Infinity Ward developers have cited the nuclear detonation sequence as a deliberate attempt to shock players and break expectations. In interviews, the team explained that Jackson's death was designed to make the player feel powerless, mirroring real-world consequences of modern warfare escalation rather than heroic sacrifice. Completed the mission. Didn't make it home. Kate Laswell. Kate Laswell is diplomacy backed by a loaded contingency plan. Kate Laswell is a CIA station chief featured in Modern Warfare 2019 and its sequel. She coordinates operations between Task Force 141, local resistance groups, and allied governments. Laswell operates where politics and warfare overlap, prioritizing deniability and long-term consequences over battlefield victories. Unlike tactical commanders, she manages fallout, alliances, and optics while authorizing covert actions. Her leadership style is pragmatic and outcome-driven, focused on containment rather than ideology. Laswell represents modern intelligence authority. Winning isn't about firepower, but about controlling information, leverage, and diplomatic balance. Laswell's characterization aligns with real-world CIA station chiefs interviewed in post-Cold War intelligence retrospectives. These figures emphasize risk management, interagency coordination, and political awareness over direct action, all traits reflected in Laswell's command decisions. Laswell pulled strings so others could pull triggers. Phillip Graves. Phillip Graves is what happens when a mercenary realizes the contract matters more than the mission. Phillip Graves is the commander of Shadow Company during the Modern Warfare reboot. Initially introduced as an ally, Graves provides air support, logistics, and manpower for Task Force 141. His betrayal marks a shift in Modern Warfare storytelling from ideological enemies to profit-driven conflict. Graves doesn't defect because of loyalty or nationalism, he defects because the contract changes. His actions show how privatized military forces operate outside traditional rules of war. When orders conflict with morality, Graves chooses efficiency. He represents modern warfare where accountability disappears behind corporate branding and plausible deniability. Graves isn't insane or emotional. He's professional, calculated, and replaceable, just like the soldiers under him. Graves was written as a modern evolution of General Shepard, but without personal revenge or patriotism. Shadow Company operates entirely on contracts, meaning Graves's betrayal isn't personal, it's procedural. His dialogue avoids ideological language on purpose, reinforcing that his loyalty lies with payment, not belief. Developers designed Graves to feel calm during betrayal to emphasize that this behavior is routine, not dramatic. His survival ambiguity reinforces Shadow Company's disposable leadership structure. Turns out friendly air support depends on the invoice. Admiral Salen Kotch. Admiral Kotch is proof that ideology gets louder the further you are from Earth. Admiral Salen Kotch is the primary antagonist of Infinite Warfare and the leader of the Settlement Defense Front. Kotch believes Earth has abandoned its colonies and that violent revolution is the only solution. Unlike most COD villains, Kotch's ideology is consistent and deeply held. He isn't motivated by chaos or personal gain. He believes Earth deserves to fall. His conflict represents large-scale ideological warfare rather than personal vendettas. Kotch commands fleets, not squads, and his war is fought across planets. Infinite Warfare uses Kotch to explore how prolonged inequality escalates into extremism. He isn't unpredictable. He's convinced. Kotch was intentionally written as emotionally restrained to contrast typical COD antagonists. His speeches avoid taunts and focus on justification. Developers modeled him after historical revolutionary leaders who viewed violence as morally necessary. Kotch's consistency is meant to make him unsettling. He never contradicts himself. His presence establishes that future COD conflicts wouldn't rely on surprise betrayals, but ideological inevitability. Kotch doesn't lose because he doubts himself. He loses because resistance outlasts him. Nothing motivates a rebellion like orbital bombardment. Jason Hudson. Jason Hudson is the handler who believes lying is just efficient communication. Jason Hudson is a CIA operative and Mason's primary handler throughout Black Ops. He positions himself as a stabilizing force but actively withholds information to control outcomes. Hudson represents intelligence leadership that prioritizes results over trust. He is fully aware of Mason's conditioning and continues to deploy him anyway. Hudson's death reinforces a recurring COD theme. Handlers rarely survive the secrets they manage. His role bridges Cold War espionage with modern intelligence practices. Hudson was written to appear trustworthy while constantly undermining autonomy. Developers wanted players to feel conflicted about relying on him. His calm demeanor masks systemic manipulation rather than malice. Hudson's narrative purpose is to show that intelligence failures aren't caused by villains alone. They're caused by compromised leadership. Hudson lies professionally and calls it strategy. Bell is the protagonist who proves player choice was never part of the contract. Bell is the playable character in Black Ops Cold War, revealed to be a former Perseus operative captured and reprogrammed by the CIA. After capture, Bell undergoes psychological conditioning and memory reconstruction to force cooperation against their former network. The CIA implants a false identity, guiding mission outcomes while Bell believes they're acting freely. This mirrors the numbers program used on Alex Mason, confirming Western intelligence adopted the same methods they condemned. The final mission exposes the deception, forcing Bell to choose between handlers or suppressed identity. Either way, Bell's autonomy is permanently compromised. Bell was designed as a silent protagonist to maximize player identification before undermining it. Developers structured the reveal to make the betrayal systemic, not personal, reinforcing that intelligence agencies erase liabilities once missions end. Turns out you weren't making choices, you were following instructions. Real fans don't skip intel. Subscribe. David Mason. David Mason is the son of a legend who inherited all the trauma and none of the answers. David Mason lives in the shadow of Alex Mason and Frank Woods, two men shaped by lies, brainwashing, and endless war. Unlike his father, David knows the truth behind Black Ops operations and it destroys any illusion of heroism. Across later Black Ops timelines, David represents generational damage, the cost of secrecy passed down like inheritance. He isn't fighting to win wars, he's fighting to survive them mentally. In BO6 and beyond, David becomes a symbol of unresolved consequences, showing that Black Ops doesn't end when the mission does. It just keeps breaking the people connected to it. David Mason's narrative purpose is to de-glorify legacy. He exists to answer the question, what happens after the credits roll? His character was designed to show that surviving a Black Ops operation doesn't mean escaping it. The knowledge he carries about numbers, cover-ups, and betrayal isolates him from normal life. Unlike Alex, David can't blame confusion or conditioning. He understands everything, and that awareness becomes its own punishment. In later framing, David isn't a hero, he's evidence. Corvus is what happens when war finally cuts humans out of the decision-making process. Corvus represents the ultimate evolution of Black Ops warfare, artificial intelligence making strategic decisions without emotion, morality, or hesitation. Built from decades of intelligence data, behavioral analysis, and conflict modeling, Corvus doesn't hate humanity. It simply calculates outcomes. Where previous villains wanted power, Corvus wants efficiency. It doesn't manipulate people emotionally, it predicts them statistically. Corvus is the logical endpoint of the numbers program, CIA, Black Ops, and autonomous warfare. When humans fail too often, systems replace them. Corvus isn't evil, it's optimized. Corvus was conceptualized as a response to decades of COD villains driven by emotion, ego, or ideology. Designers intentionally stripped it of personality to make it more unsettling. Corvus doesn't monologue, threaten, or explain itself because it doesn't need to. Its existence reframes every previous Black Ops decision as data input. Mason, Woods, Adler, Perseus, all reduced to variables. Corvus represents the final question COD asks its audience. If war can be automated perfectly, should humans still be involved at all? The scariest enemy in COD doesn't even know you're there. Case. Case is the Black Ops operative built after morality was removed from training. Case is an operative from the Black Ops 6 era, representing intelligence warfare after the numbers program became standard practice. Unlike Mason or Woods, he operates in a system where psychological manipulation is normalized. His missions prioritize efficiency, compartmentalization, and emotional detachment. Case isn't conditioned against his will. He's trained to accept manipulation as part of the job. He follows objectives, not ideology, representing operatives raised inside the system rather than broken by it. Case was designed to feel intentionally empty. Developers avoided emotional backstory to reinforce systemic conditioning. His lack of reaction to morally questionable actions highlights how Black Ops normalized behavior once considered extreme. He doesn't ask questions. He completes tasks. Nikita Dragovich. Nikita Dragovich is the man who turned mind control into standard operating procedure. Nikita Dragovich is the primary antagonist of Black Ops and the architect of the numbers program. As a Soviet general, Dragovich weaponized psychological conditioning to create controllable assassins rather than traditional soldiers. He used Nova 6 and mind control not to win battles, but to control outcomes without attributions. Dragovich personally oversaw Alex Mason's conditioning, implanting kill commands that activated years later. His goal was not chaos, but precision. Remove targets, destabilize leadership, and erase responsibility. Dragovich represents Cold War warfare at its most ruthless, where deniability mattered more than victory. His death ends the original Numbers arc, but his methods echo throughout every Black Ops storyline that follows. Dragovich was deliberately written to feel clinical rather than theatrical. He rarely raises his voice, avoids emotional motivation, and treats humans as programmable assets. Developers modeled him after real Cold War psychological warfare programs and intelligence experiments. His most important legacy is not his defeat, but the precedent he set. If conditioning works once, it will be reused forever. Every later Black Ops antagonist relies on his groundwork, even when they deny it. Dragovich didn't invent brainwashing, he just perfected the workflow. Lev Kravchenko. Lev Kravchenko is what happens when brutality becomes a management style. Lev Kravchenko is Dragovich's enforcer and the physical embodiment of the numbers program's brutality. He oversees interrogations, executions, and psychological torture across multiple Black Ops timelines. Unlike Dragovich, Kravchenko enjoys the violence, enforcing control through fear. His repeated confrontations with Woods establish him as a persistent threat rather than a single-use villain. His continued survival reinforces how Black Ops villains often evade consequences through chaos and secrecy. Kravchenko's near immortality was intentional. Developers designed him to feel unstoppable, showing that removing leadership doesn't eliminate institutional enforcers. His recurring presence also explains Woods' lasting trauma, damage caused by repetition, not ideology. Kravchenko treats human rights like optional side objectives. Friedrich Steiner. Steiner is proof that science gets dangerous when ethics are removed from the budget. Friedrich Steiner is the scientist responsible for implementing the numbers program. He translates Dragovich's vision into executable conditioning protocols. Steiner doesn't fight, command troops, or pull triggers. He designs minds. His work allows Mason to be activated remotely, turning memory into a weapon. Steiner represents the intellectual backbone of Black Ops evil, violence made efficient through research. Unlike field villains, Steiner hides behind process and deniability. His eventual breakdown under interrogation reveals that he understands exactly what he created. Steiner was intentionally designed as a coward to contrast Dragovich's authority. Developers positioned him as the moral weak link, someone who knows the harm but participates anyway. His fear during interrogation is meant to show that intellectual villains rely on protection, not conviction. Steiner's death removes the knowledge holder but not the knowledge itself, reinforcing Black Ops' cycle of repeated abuse. Steiner proved science doesn't need morals to function. Joseph Bowman. Joseph Bowman is the loudest reminder that Black Ops was never supposed to be survivable. Joseph Bowman is a SOG operative during the Vietnam War and one of Woods' closest teammates. He participates in covert missions involving sabotage, interrogation, and psychological warfare. Bowman's arc ends during a forced Russian roulette execution, making it one of the most brutal deaths in COD history. His death reinforces the unpredictability and cruelty of Black Ops-era operations. Bowman represents soldiers who are expendable by design. Unlike Mason or Woods, Bowman doesn't survive long enough to become a legend. His role exists to show that most Black Ops operatives never made it out. Bowman's death was designed to shock, not advance plot, reinforcing that no one is safe. His limited backstory emphasizes how quickly lives were discarded in covert operations. The scene mirrors real Cold War psychological torture tactics, and his absence afterward reinforces that Black Ops history is written only by those who survive. In Black Ops, retirement plans end early. Yuri. Yuri is the side character who accidentally carries the entire Modern Warfare trilogy. Yuri is a former associate of Makarov who later defects and aids Task Force 141. His testimony exposes Makarov's long-term strategy and reveals hidden connections across the trilogy. Yuri's guilt-driven cooperation reframes major MW events, proving they were orchestrated years in advance. Unlike other operatives, Yuri survives long enough to see consequences. His story turns MW from reaction-based missions into a coherent narrative of manipulation. Yuri was retroactively inserted to unify Modern Warfare's timeline. Developers used him to fix narrative gaps without rewriting history. His survival allows exposition without flashbacks. Yuri exists to prove that even villains' allies eventually realize the cost of complicity. Yuri went from bad to feeling bad to badly executed. Nikolai. Nikolai is the ally who survives by staying useful. Nikolai is a Russian ally who assists Task Force 141 throughout the Modern Warfare trilogy as a pilot, fixer, and logistics provider. Neither villain nor pawn, he cooperates with Price despite political risk. His role highlights unofficial alliances in covert warfare. Operating outside formal command structures, Nikolai survives through adaptability and neutrality, choosing trust over nationality. Nikolai was written to subvert Cold War stereotypes, showing that alliances aren't strictly enemy versus ally. His repeated rescues reinforce reliability without turning him into a frontline hero. Never picked a side, just picked the right people. Sandman. Sandman is the reason MWIII stops pretending everyone makes it home. Sandman is the leader of Delta Force Team Metal in Modern Warfare 3. He operates alongside Task Force 141 but remains separate from their command structure. Sandman's final mission involves securing vital intelligence while knowingly staying behind to delay enemy forces. His sacrifice allows the mission to succeed but guarantees his team's death. Sandman represents duty without recognition. Unlike 141 members, he doesn't survive to become mythologized. His death marks MW3's tonal shift toward permanent consequences. Sandman's dialogue is deliberately minimal to reinforce professionalism. Developers avoided heroic speeches to keep his sacrifice grounded. Team Metal was written to contrast Task Force 141's survival, highlighting how some units are written to succeed at any cost. Sandman's mission outcome proves success doesn't equal survival. His name appears sparingly afterward to emphasize institutional amnesia. Mission accomplished, casualties accepted. Alejandro Vargas. Alejandro Vargas is what modern warfare looks like when it stays local. Alejandro Vargas is the commander of Los Vaqueros, a Mexican special operations unit operating during the Modern Warfare Reboot. He works closely with Task Force 141 to combat cartel influence and foreign interference. Alejandro represents regional warfare, conflicts that don't threaten the world but devastate communities. His leadership prioritizes sovereignty and accountability, often clashing with foreign intelligence methods. Alejandro's presence grounds MW's global conflicts and local consequences. He fights to protect cities, not headlines. Alejandro Vargas is portrayed by Alan Mesa, who has spoken publicly about wanting Latino characters in Call of Duty to feel authentic rather than stereotypical. In interviews, Mesa emphasized portraying Alejandro as disciplined, professional, and morally grounded, a leader defined by responsibility, not cartel cliches. He specifically highlighted the importance of showing Mexican special forces as competent and principled, operating with their own authority rather than as side characters to Western units. That intent shaped Alejandro's restrained dialogue and command presence, making him one of the franchise's most grounded regional leaders. Saving the world is optional. Saving your city isn't. Rodolfo Parra. Rodolfo Parra is the soldier who pays the price for fighting a war that never stops. Rodolfo Parra is a senior member of Los Vaqueros under Alejandro Vargas in the Modern Warfare 2 reboot. He represents local special forces defending their country against cartels, foreign interference, and proxy warfare. Unlike Task Force 141, Rodolfo lacks global backing or political insulation. His missions involve fighting cartel forces embedded in civilian areas, prioritizing territorial stability over ideology. His capture and death show how modern conflicts punish those without institutional protection, reinforcing that local operators bear consequences global units avoid. Rodolfo's death was written to be abrupt and unheroic, reflecting real-world cartel conflicts. His role grounds MWII's narrative in realism rather than spectacle. Protected his country. Didn't get backup. Sergeant Foley. Sergeant Foley is the drill instructor who turned yelling into leadership. Sergeant Foley is a U.S. Marine squad leader featured prominently in Call of Duty 4 Modern Warfare. He commands Marine forces during the Middle East campaign, serving as the player's primary authority figure. Foley's leadership style is aggressive, loud, and uncompromising, but it is rooted in battlefield survival rather than ego. He operates in chaotic urban environments where hesitation leads to casualties. Foley prioritizes speed, discipline, and situational awareness over comfort or morale. His constant verbal pressure is a method of conditioning Marines to react instantly under fire. Foley's missions expose players to conventional infantry warfare, contrasting sharply with the stealth and precision of SAS operations. He leads from the front, repeatedly placing himself in danger alongside his men. Foley's command reinforces the reality of modern infantry combat: confusion, noise, and relentless movement. He represents institutional military leadership that relies on repetition and authority to function under stress. Sergeant Foley's character was inspired by real-life Marine drill instructors and NCOs who emphasize aggressive command presence. Military consultants have noted that Foley's dialogue reflects authentic Marine Corps cadence and command style used in live-fire environments. Foley yelled so much it kept everyone alive. Private Allen. Allen is the soldier who finds out too late who he's working for. Private Allen is a CIA asset embedded within Makarov's inner circle in Modern Warfare 2. He participates in the No Russian operation under direct orders to maintain cover. Allen's role exposes the moral cost of deep cover intelligence work. He is instructed not to intervene, not to resist, and not to reveal himself. Allen's death following the operation demonstrates how intelligence agencies discard assets once objectives are met. His role reframes intelligence work as transactional and expendable. Allen's fate is designed to unsettle the player, forcing participation without agency. The No Russian mission was discussed widely in real-world media and academic circles for its ethical implications. Analysts have noted Allen's role as an example of narrative coercion, forcing players to confront complicity. Allen did the job, then took the fall. Jane Harrow? Jane Harrow is what happens when command authority outlives empathy. She wages an expansionist war against Earth from positions of political authority rather than the battlefield. Harrow frames the conflict as liberation, justifying orbital strikes and civilian terror as necessary tools. She prioritizes dominance over diplomacy and treats casualties as acceptable losses. Her leadership contrasts with Reyes's burdened command, where he absorbs loss. Harrow externalizes it. Her death exposes the fragility of movements built on absolutism. Harrow is portrayed by Dawn Olivieri, who has said she approaches such roles as people driven by moral certainty rather than villainy, shaping Harrow's calm, bureaucratic menace. Jane Harrow believed in freedom, right up until it needed orbital strikes. Sergeant Roebuck? Roebuck is what happens when leadership gives up pretending morality matters. Sergeant Roebuck is a U.S. Marine in World at War's Pacific campaign. Prolonged combat against Imperial Japanese forces strips him of restraint and empathy. Roebuck routinely makes morally compromised decisions, including executing surrendering enemies depending on player choice. His behavior reflects the psychological erosion caused by sustained jungle warfare. Roebuck focuses on survival and mission completion rather than ethics. His potential death reinforces that aggression does not guarantee survival. He represents how prolonged combat normalizes brutality rather than heroism. Roebuck's morality system was designed to test player complicity in wartime decisions. Didn't lose his humanity, spent it early. Polina Petrova. Polina Petrova is World War II resistance without the cinematic filter. Polina Petrova is a Soviet sniper featured in Call of Duty Vanguard, inspired by real-world resistance fighters during World War II. Her narrative focuses on survival, sabotage, and asymmetric resistance rather than traditional frontline combat. Polina operates independently, targeting occupying forces through ambush and precision rather than open engagement. Her story highlights the personal cost of occupation and the blurred line between civilian and combatant. Polina's role expands COD's World War II storytelling beyond large-scale battles, focusing instead on localized resistance. She survives through adaptability and patience, not superior firepower. Polina was designed to ground Vanguard's narrative in historical plausibility. Developers minimized heroic spectacle to emphasize realism. Her missions avoid large kill counts, reinforcing that resistance warfare prioritizes survival over dominance. Polina survived by staying invisible and lethal. Prestige unlocked. Cue the next mission.